The Baltimore Ravens didn't punt the ball once. The Buffalo Bills punted it one time, but they were scoring touchdowns. The Baltimore Ravens didn't punt it once, but unfortunately for them, they had 3 back-breaking turnovers. Both of the Lamar Jackson turnovers came on designed pass plays. The designed pass plays came following some plays that are also questionable. They had a 1st and 10, just clear handoff to Derrick Henry. No element of read option from Lamar Jackson. Derrick Henry gets stuffed for a 1-yard loss on 1st and 10. Sets up a 2nd and 11. Pretty obvious passing situation. Lamar Jackson throws an interception. We got the video right here, where I pause it here. Lamar's getting ready to throw it. He sees his receiver breaking open. The second Lamar releases it, the receiver breaks to the outside. Lamar Jackson overthrows it to where the receiver was running when he started to throw the football, and it gets picked off. Not a good pass by Lamar Jackson. Clear miscommunication by the comments in this tweet and the smarter people than I at trying to diagnose this. This was an option route by Bateman. Lamar Jackson wasn't really in sync with what Bateman was expected to do here, and interception. They fumbled the ball as well, Lamar did, on a 2nd and 10 pass that followed a 1st and 10 incompletion. So it just gets me to wondering a little bit here about Lamar Jackson's legs. I talked about this beforehand. I talked about this in the lead up to this game, that Lamar Jackson's legs are one of the most dangerous weapons in all of football. I wasn't trying to take anything away from his arm, but I think everybody out there agrees, and this is such a hot button topic. Lamar Jackson is like this, the most polarizing topic in the NFL. But I don't care. Like, if you dislike Lamar Jackson for some reason, it tells me a little bit about you. Let's just leave it at that. But you have to even admit, even his detractors have to admit, that his legs, his ability to run with the football, to put defenders in a bind, is one of his biggest assets. And let me ask you this. How many designed runs in this game do you think that the Baltimore Ravens had for Lamar Jackson? 0. 0 designed runs for Lamar Jackson in this game. I'm not talking about quarterback scrambles on pass plays where he had 4 of those for 44 yards. Obviously, that's 11 yards per play on a quarterback scramble, which I said was the single best way to run the football with Lamar. It's the highest upside for any quarterback out there, is a designed pass play where a run lane opens and you take it. He had 44. He was averaging 11 yards per play, which is obviously more than any quarterback is generally going to average when they even throw the ball. And I'm going to average 11 yards per pass attempt most of the time. 11 yards per play on quarterback scrambles. He only had 4 of those. That was obviously tremendously helpful for this offense. But let me ask you this. They played 18 games this year prior to this game against the Buffalo Bills where he had 0 designed runs. How many games of those 18 did Lamar Jackson have 0 designed runs? Those other 18 games, did he have any that had 0 designed runs? No. He had 0 games where he had 0 designed runs prior to this one. And you have the biggest game, the most important game, where it's, 8 degrees wind chill up in Buffalo at night, and you have 0 designed runs. In the wild card round, he had 10. In the wild card round against the Pittsburgh Steelers, he had 10. Another team that knows him extremely well, he still had 10 designed run plays. And they go to Buffalo, and they don't incorporate it at all into this game plan. It's not even like, let's try it 2 or 3 or 4 times. And if whoever's assigned to Lamar is going to beat him one-on-one and take him down, then fine. We'll pivot away from that. No, we're just not even going to try running Lamar. We're not even going to try any designed runs at all. Again, you could credit Sean McDermott for the way that he's deploying his defense. But if I'm Baltimore and Lamar Jackson's legs are better than any other quarterback's legs in the entirety of the NFL, you have to try it. If it doesn't work, at least you go to bed at night saying it didn't work. We didn't waste too many plays doing it. And I know there are some people out there, oh, well, the Ravens were driving the ball. They didn't really need it. They didn't punt the ball. They didn't need it. You're back up, rewind like 4 minutes. The turnovers came on designed pass plays. Those pass plays, they were throwing the ball in those situations, 2nd and 10, 2nd and 11, because on first downs, they weren't using any designed runs from Lamar Jackson. They were either passing the ball on first down, throwing incompletions, or they were handing direct handoff to Derrick Henry, losing a yard. And so there were obvious pass situations on second down. You get the blitz where Lamar Jackson gets turned around and fumbles the ball. You get the interception where Lamar Jackson is misreading the defense, or there's some sort of miscommunication there with Rashard Bateman in an obvious passing situation. No threat of Lamar Jackson actually running the football on these designed runs. Makes no sense at all to me. And once again, not very many people are discussing this, not like last year where everybody after that AFC Championship loss were coming out of the woodwork discussing the fact, why weren't the Ravens running the football with their running backs at all in this game? Why were they asking Lamar Jackson to drop back 1 billion times and throw it? I'm going to talk about how Lamar Jackson played when he did throw the ball here in this game and overall this postseason. The numbers probably are going to be pretty shocking to you when you consider what the narrative is about him. But let's not forget, they did not run the ball at all with him. To me, that would have made a big difference. It potentially cuts down on the turnovers, which is the reason the Ravens even lost this game. If the Ravens don't have those 2 Lamar Jackson turnovers, and then the boneheaded Mark Andrews play where he thinks he's Tyreek Hill all of a sudden, and the end zone is that way, but he wants to cut back between these defenders the other direction and gets the ball punched out. I mean, that was the difference there, those 3 turnovers. But let's talk about Lamar Jackson, aside from those turnovers, aside from the fact that they weren't running him at all. In the entirety of the postseason this year, there were 20 different qualifying quarterbacks. 20 different quarterback games. We'll talk about that momentarily. But in the entirety of the postseason, out of the 14 quarterbacks that were there, he ranks number 2 in EPA per pass attempt, number 2 in yards per attempt, number 3 in completion rate, 74% completions this postseason, number 2 in yards per attempt at 9.2, number 3 in EPA per attempt at plus 0.22. He did that despite facing this postseason the most man coverage of any quarterback. 53% of Lamar Jackson's pass attempts came against man coverage. That was the most for any quarterback this postseason. He also did that without his number 1 wide receiver. Now, how many other quarterbacks out there are going to average 9.2 yards per attempt, which is second most in the postseason, without your number 1 wide receiver? And it's not like Baltimore's number 2 and number 3 are like, oh, well, these could be, it's not like you're moving like the Cincinnati Bengals with a bunch of good wide receivers, or even like a Miami Dolphins who have a couple. We're talking about the Baltimore Ravens. Zay Flowers is good. He's not even like a elite, fearful number 1 wide receiver. And then you're moving to Rashard Bateman and who knows who else for the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson's completion percentage over expectation, CPOE, is plus 0.16% this postseason. This is the best of any quarterback in the NFL this postseason. 16% above expectation is what Lamar Jackson was completing his passes at this year. Number 1. Number 2 was Josh Allen, but that was all the way down at 12.7% over expectation. Lamar was up at 16%. There have been 20 quarterbacks. Let's talk about just this game against the Buffalo Bills. There have been 20 quarterback games played this postseason thus far. 20 games played by quarterbacks. Lamar's game versus the Bills ranked the 4th best in EPA per play, the 3rd best in yards per attempt, the 6th best in completion rate, the number 1 best in third down conversion rate, and the number 1 best in third down conversion rate when passing the football. Of any quarterback this entire postseason in any one of their games, Lamar was delivering these numbers against the Buffalo Bills in 4-degree weather without his number 1 wide receiver. Also, another key stat that's pretty amazing. He had the number 2 lowest rate of passes thrown at or behind the line of scrimmage of all of these 20 quarterbacks in their games. The 2nd lowest rate of these short, easy passes that are at or behind the line of scrimmage, where you might complete high percentage of passes. He averaged the 4th highest air yards per pass attempt So I think that's pretty remarkable. Now, obviously, there's a lot of criticism of Lamar Jackson. Maybe I'm not seeing a ton in here, but some guy in the comments didn't like the fact that I might be talking about Lamar Jackson, which obviously we're going to talk about Lamar Jackson on a divisional recap show. Let's go there. There's DJ. Yeah, DJ, just turn off the show. If you just turn off the show, we don't need people who don't want to get smart about football. We're here to change your mind. We're here to present opinions and beyond opinions, the data, DJ, that's going to help you get more intelligent about understanding Lamar's strengths and his weaknesses. No quarterback is perfect. Lamar certainly has some of his weaknesses. Let's talk about these playoff losses. That's the biggest thing that I think Lamar's detractors have. Go ahead and pop that up there. The next chart. This is Lamar Jackson versus Peyton Manning. So Lamar has been in the NFL for 7 years. He's 3 wins and 5 losses in the playoffs. Peyton Manning, the golden boy, when in my day, it was Peyton versus Tom Brady, right? Peyton versus Tom Brady was all the rage. Before Tom Brady even came about, because Tom Brady was a lower draft pick, Peyton was the golden boy. Peyton was the guy who was supposed to kind of come out here and revolutionize this sport based on what he did in college and how much he was regarded. And he came into the NFL and he struggled massively, both with winning games initially, but then with performing in the postseason. In his first 7 years, Peyton Manning was also 3 wins and 5 losses in the playoffs, 3 and 5. He went to the playoffs the next year, which would be like Lamar Jackson going to the playoffs in 2026, which is like this upcoming season, the 2025 football season. January of 2026, 1 year from now, Lamar goes to the playoffs. Peyton went 0-1 that year. Didn't even get a playoff win. One and done, out. Peyton goes to the playoffs the very next year, his 9th year in the NFL, 2 years further than Lamar is right now. He goes 4-0 and wins the Super Bowl, his first Super Bowl. And the narrative completely changes about who Peyton Manning is, what Peyton Manning can do, can he win games, where does he stand, which these discussions I absolutely hate. I hate these discussions. Well, which is the best historical quarterback? Well, this guy or that guy? Or which is the best historical basketball player of all time? I hate discussing things like that. I just think it's fodder just to bring up so that people can either argue with one another or have something to talk about on these talk shows. But the bottom line is Lamar has had the similar struggles to Peyton Manning. And I just read off to you the statistics about Lamar Jackson and what he did this postseason. One of the best quarterbacks that has played this postseason. Statistically, the best quarterback in a number of these metrics this postseason. The best completion percentage over expectation this postseason. If Mark Andrews doesn't fumble the ball running over the middle, if Mark Andrews doesn't drop the 2-point conversion, if Lamar Jackson doesn't throw 1 interception on a misread route, and all this is without his number 1 wide receiver. So it's not as if Lamar Jackson is coming into these playoffs, especially as he's gotten a little bit more mature, especially as he's gotten better play calling. Keep in mind, remember, it was like Greg Roman calling the plays for him. Back when Lamar Jackson was first starting, all they were doing was running the ball. It wasn't an offense built on building up Lamar Jackson's confidence or throwing the ball a lot. It was a lot of running. So if you want to be critical about Lamar Jackson, that's your right. If you want to say he can't win in the playoffs, you can say whatever you want to say. I haven't loved the Ravens game plan against the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship game at home. I think that was one of the worst game plans I've seen from an offense ever in my entire life based on your strength versus your opponent's weakness. The Ravens decided to come out and throw the ball all over the yard into the Chiefs' defensive strength while not using their offensive strength, which was their run game, to attack the Chiefs' defensive weakness, which was their run defense. The most mind-boggling game plan. Then you have this game. It was unfortunate. They had multiple opportunities that they blew. They statistically outgained the Buffalo Bills. They didn't punt the ball once. They had a couple of bad turnovers, 3 of them. And they were playing without their number 1 wide receiver. And Sean McDermott played a smart game plan defensively. We got to credit Sean McDermott and the Buffalo Bills. We're not just glossing over that. I spent the first 10 minutes of the show or more praising the Buffalo Bills for everything that they did. So that's my take on Lamar Jackson. I think he's one of the best players that we have in the NFL. I totally disagree with guys that I've heard on the national stage talking about Lamar Jackson, and he can't get it done. He's never going to get it done. I can't imagine what they would have said about Peyton Manning, and then how much crow they would have had to eat once Peyton Manning won the first Super Bowl and had the rest of his career the way that he did. So, and there's a lot of things that Lamar, and he'll be the first to tell you, needs to improve about his game. There's a lot of things the Ravens do as well.